Lions fans, this is probably one of my favorite things I get to say all year. Congratulations.
Super Bowl?
No. Regardless of how your season ends, and I have a different opinion on how I think it will end than I think most people, but good job. It was a good year. Frustrating. Very Jekyll and Hyde. A lot of negatives. A lot of positives. Frustrating, of course. I don't like inconsistency, but you know what? Reality is they were 1-6, and they did go 6-1. And there's something in between both of those truths that is more of the truth. Does that make sense, Jeff?
Yeah. Yep.
So at the end of the day, they can lose out, they can win out. I've seen the progress you wanted to see before the season going into year 2. Did it happen the way it should happen or it typically happens around the NFL? No, the hell it didn't. 1-6, not ideal. 6-1, holy hell. Losing to Carolina on the road with the playoffs in your hand, not ideal. So it's still a young team.
Right.
I will give them that. I will give them that they're still going to add a lot of players in the offseason, and they will be better next year. But mission accomplished-ish. I don't want to say it's a success, because that's not what I define success as. But when we went into the year, let's all be fair here, we said 7, 8, at most 9 wins. That's what they're at. And how it happened, very frustrating and very euphoric, right? You had two total opposite ends of the spectrum here. You had 1-6, wanted to kill myself. 6-1, wanted to do blow off this mic, right? Now, there's somewhere in between those two that is probably more so of this team. But I don't know how you can't call their season a success if you're not honest about what your expectations were before the year.
Right.
And again, they didn't win anything. They didn't make the playoffs yet. They didn't win the division. They didn't win a playoff game. They haven't done anything, right? But they took a necessary step forward in what we all understand is a rebuild. And as frustrated as I was when they were 1-6, they did a hell of a job recovering and going 6 of 7. And it's 7 or 8 week stretch, I believe. And that helps. That changes a lot.
Yeah.
Now, do I like the inconsistency? No, I don't. Do I think it's ideal to start a season 1-6 and then finish strong? No, I don't. That is not a recipe for success. Having said that, next year you will be afforded an opportunity, a clean slate, to start the season well, very well, average, and hopefully work towards a division title, a wild card appearance. Then we're talking.
Absolutely.
So that's where I'm at this year with them.
And I'm looking at the big picture. I think we're in lockstep here. The big picture to me is before the season, like you said, we asked for 7, 8, 9 wins at the most. Some people on the network said 10, like Ryan Ermanni. And at the time, he thought he was crazy. But after the 1-6 start, them winning 6 of 7, them being as hot as they were, one of the most hottest teams in football, and on top of that, a team that still, I believe, nobody wants to play. But the down part of that, what you've seen most of this season, is the inconsistencies. And of course, you have a young team, mostly young defense, and performances like Saturday, although they're not acceptable, it doesn't completely surprise me. It just doesn't. And maybe this team wasn't ready this year to make that run. But we did mention before the season how bad the NFC would be. Maybe they have a chance to sneak in. And right now, they still do.
But how true is that, though? That ended up being spot on.
Yeah, it was very true. You said that. And you're spot on.
It ended up being worse than even we thought.
Yeah, you told me. You said with 8 wins, they could possibly get in. And if they get 9, they'll possibly get in. So either way, I mean, you were right on the money with that.
The teams that are borderline wildcard teams will all finish likely at least with a minimum of 8 wins.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, we called this. So, for me, the progress is there. For me, it was more about the players, the young players. And all the players I was looking to take that next step have. Although they've been inconsistent, a Kirby Joseph, for the most part, you're happy with how he's played. Not even playing an entire season, starting when he wasn't supposed to initially because of Tracy Walker being out. So a lot of positive things come from this season. Trading T.J. Hockenson, getting the draft capital for him, and seeing your tight ends like a Brock Wright, a Zylstra, a James Mitchell, those guys make plays. And the big one for me is Jared Goff. You got to see Jared Goff this season not only play some of his best football, but look the most confident he's ever looked and the most comfortable. And we know the stat going around. He hasn't thrown an interception the last, 7 games. He fumbled last game, but still hasn't been turning the ball over. That should give you more confidence heading into next season, because if this defense was even remotely slightly better than what it's been all year,
they'd be a 9-10 win team.
They'd be a 9-10 win team. So again, there's your game plan. There's your blueprint. Go out and address those needs on your football team. And this team will be contending for the division next year. I do believe that. So to me, regardless of how the next 2 games finish out, I can comfortably say this was a successful season for the Lions. I'm very happy. Although you're 1-6, the fact that they won 6 of 7 and then 6 of 8 now, it's still impressive to me. It showed what this team could be when they're clicking on all cylinders. You just need a little more talent, and these players got to develop, which they're going to.
It's like looking at data reports, right? You never want to just look at the extremes. The 1-6 and 6-1, I don't think are fair reflections of the team. I think all of you would agree with that.
Yeah.
The Lions are not a 6-1 football team. They can be, but they're not. And I don't think they're as bad as a 1-6 football team. So there's somewhere in between. And somewhere in between is a 7, 8, 9, I wouldn't say 9. So somewhere between a 6, 7, or 8 win team. Mm-hmm. And that's what they're going to be. They're going to end up being at worst 7-10, maybe 8 and 9, at best 9 and 8. And it is what it is. But the biggest thing, Jeff, I think you hit on it already. You have to quantify it as a successful season, because Jared Goff played at a Pro Bowl level. Mm-hmm. Ben Johnson was who you thought he was. Amon-Ra St. Brown didn't have a sophomore slump. Jameson Williams, you hope, has a strong finish to the year. You're optimistic for him in the future. The offensive line was what you thought it would be. Now, the running backs, disappointing, but you'll have a solution for that in the offseason.
Absolutely.
And then you go to the defensive side of the ball. Some of the bright spots: Malcolm Rodriguez, Aiden Hutchinson, Kirby Joseph at times, Jerry Jacobs at times, Jeff Okudah early on in the year, but
I think him being healthy is the big one for me.
Yeah.
Just
He's lucky to be the number 2 corner on this team next year. I mean, he's got a lot of work to do. He just does. He's not out of the water. He does not look like a number 1. He had moments, he had flashes, but he hasn't strung it along consistently. So there's a lot of work to do there. But it starts with the coach, and it ends with the coach. At 1-6, he couldn't get out of his own way. And through that 6-1 stretch, he was making, for the most part, almost every decision. I would say he was making every right decision. Outside of Buffalo, I don't think he made an egregious mistake. Now, the win against Minnesota, I believe it was Minnesota. The same concept where he didn't take the points, or he tried to kick the field goal.
Kick the field goal.
He made that same mistake. That was the whole thing, but he wasn't punished for it. So
yeah, they made it. So it didn't come back to bite him.
I've seen a lot of growth. Growth is nice. We all like to grow in our careers, our fields, but eventually you have to make something stick. And that's what next year is for. Next year, you go out, you better win 10 games. Mm-hmm. Because the talent there is there offensively. I 100% believe defensively they'll be much better next year. And if they're not, I got nothing.
Yeah.
Because you have 4 picks in the first 2 rounds. You've got $28 million in available salary cap. Figure it out. And I believe Brad Holmes will. And Dan Campbell next year, meaningful games. When you are 2-1, and you need to make a decision that will either take you to 3-1 or 2-2, what are you going to do? Are you going to shoot yourself in the foot? Or are you going to come out next year and start 2-1, 4-2, 4-3? And be a team that is going to make their way, hopefully, to not only a wild card spot, but contending for your own division. That's the conversation we're going to be having all offseason. So, to me, not the most ideal start. I was really losing my shit when they were 1-6. They offered me no data, no hope, but they somehow turned it around. And for that, they get a round of applause, whatever the hell you want to give them.
Yeah.
They've earned their 3rd year to say, this is our year. We finally have enough time. We've had 3 drafts. We've had 3 off seasons. It's go time.
Right. The expectation.
7 wins next year is unacceptable.
I was going to say, the expectations rise, and although players and coaches, they want those expectations, it's really about how they start next year. That's going to be the big one for me.
Yep.